Hello, welcome to Clickbait, and today we're talking about film, more specifically weird obscure film you've never heard of, but maybe if you're lucky you'll find a roll and this will give you some idea as to what it's going to be like to use. In this case it's Washi D 500 ISO. Now Washi, if you've not come across them before, are a French brand who specialise in, well, creating unusual niche microbrew films from specialist films from around the world. What they've all got in common though is that they're unusual, low volume and have incredibly cool packaging. So you'll be wanting to hang on to the canister long after you've developed the film, which is also very coolly packaged and actually recycled. I can see Kodak yellow underneath the stuck on label on the front of it. In fact, when I processed it, I could see it was held onto the end of the roll by masking tape, so you could tell this is very much handmade, low volume, made with love, I think is the best way to put it. Now I bought this film from Analog Wonderland, and they've got a lot of interesting and unusual films on there. And if you want to give them a go and have a look at some of the stuff they've got, there's a referral link in the description below, which will give us both some wonder points towards buying some interesting films of your own. Now Washi may sound Japanese, but apparently they are French, and they've got an interesting variety of weird and wonderful films from around the world, including close to infrared, close to X-ray, black and white reversal, black and white positive, colour films, all kinds of stuff. But anyway, D is an interesting one. This is a Russian spy film. It's an aerographic kind of film, which is an old emulsion that was used for spy planes basically, and they've cut it down to the 35mm format so we can actually use it in regular cameras. And I loaded mine into my EOS 600 with its f1.8 lens, which is good because exposure is fairly critical and the meter on this camera is pretty good, so you don't want to be dropping shots thanks to not getting it quite right in the metering stage. So although Washi D is 500 ISO on the label, it can be pushed to 1500 or 1600 quite happily. It's a little bit of push processing after the event, and this is a very versatile low light film as well. What you must remember though is there is no DX coding on the canister, so don't forget to manually set that when you load the film. And if you've got a roll of this or you're thinking of buying some, this is what you might be wondering, what it's like to use and what the results are like. Well, we can stick the results up here, and I can tell you, like it says on the website, it is quite a contrasty film. Very dark blacks, very white whites, lots of colours going on. Let's open this up and have a quick look. The main thing that strikes you though, anywhere that's a dark area, incredibly grainy, really heavy grain, but lots of detail in there as well. This is really very interesting. This is actually, well, it's a bit too much, you can just see pure grain now in there. This is actually the turbine of a jet engine over at Brooklyn's museum. So compared with FP4 for example, this is quite a lot grainier. So it's a film you want to be using when you're going to be hoping to enjoy that effect rather than find that being a problem. Again, the shell, we've got very good contrast, the dark of the writing, the white of the background of the globe. It does give us lots of detail, but again very heavy grain, so you're going to be finding subjects that are going to work with that. So maybe some interesting old architecture. I used it over a variety of subjects, old cars, some plants, just out and about, and it's an interesting all-rounder. With older subjects like these vintage cars, it gives a lot of atmosphere to that kind of thing. But what was very interesting was when we got into the soft, subtle blending tones of flowers. This looks very 1940s, and it looks like I've shot it on a 1940s camera with 1940s film, even though the rest of the film doesn't look like this. This film really responds to, first of all, bright light, and it responds well to perfect exposure. You can't mess around with this one. It does not tolerate incorrect anything. So unlike FP4 or HP5, which are pretty tolerant and will let you get away with all kinds of mishandling, this stuff is a lot less happy-go-lucky when it comes to that kind of thing. So, as you can see in this picture of a poppy, you can get incredible detail out of it, but there's still a little bit of grain texture and just very interesting tones. So I'll run you through a few pictures on this roll. When you've got nice even light, not too much contrast between the very bright and the very dark, it does come out quite nice, quite even. It handles that relatively well, and the grain isn't too extreme. Start getting into a bit more of a contrast, so we've got the silver car, the darkness of the badge, then you start noticing heavier, much heavier grain, but interesting effects though. It's nice to look at. It adds a little bit more interest than you would otherwise have with a crisper, cleaner thing. shoot something very old and you do get a very old feeling to it. So maybe if you've got some historic subjects you can point the camera at, this will respond well to it. Now if you're home processing, this is another matter. According to the Washi website, if you want to treat it like PAN-F, that's probably not a bad place to start. I developed it using ID11 and they give a time for 1+1, so 50% developer, 50% water, 20 degrees, and they say 8 minutes. I tried it in stock developer at 20 degrees for 6.5 minutes and it came out looking pretty well, pretty good as it goes. But the developer came out looking like a particularly nasty sample, so I think next time I'll do 1:1 so I can throw it away without losing so much. What you do find though is that the film, when you load it, is very, very thin indeed. I guess being an aero film, they've made it a thinner background, so it's a lot lighter. But that does mean it's quite hard to get into the reel without putting any crinks and crumples in there. I did find a bit of halation, some darkening around the sprocket holes after the thing was developed, which is a bit unusual. I've not seen that for a very long time in anything else. So the timings were actually pretty accurate, I was given. And the negatives are nice and clear and they're scanned, well, as you can see, scanned easily using the old Minolta Dynax 5400. Now the question is, would I buy some more? Well, if I could, I would. Unfortunately, the whole thing with Russia having slightly invaded Ukraine last year has put a bit of a fly in the ointment and a crimp in the works as far as obtaining this stuff. So currently it's not available, but if you can find some in stock anywhere, we've got some in a cupboard, this is the kind of thing you can look forward to seeing processed. It's an interesting film. Don't waste it on a throwaway subject that, well, some FP4 or Kentmere would happily take care of. This is a more interesting film, so find a subject with plenty of contrast, or historic interest I would suggest, so that you can get the most out of it. It is a very accurate film, it's a spy film after all, so it has to be pretty accurate. However, it has got lots of grain and that does show through anywhere there's darkness in the image. And so find subjects that are going to respond well to that. Lots of contrast, lots of detail, and it'll work well. If you're going to shoot it for portraits, then maybe style them up a bit so that it's got an older fashioned look, slightly harsh lighting maybe. That hopefully will respond well to that. And beware of light shining into the lens. This, where the sun is behind that building behind the BP sign, I actually thought when I saw it on the negative, I actually thought it was light leakage from the camera or loading it into the developing tank. In fact, it's where the light had actually bled out of the image and into the sprocket area through the emulsion itself, which is quite unusual. So have you ever come across a roll of Washi D before? Have you used it? And if you have, what did you use it for? Let me know in the comments below. And in future videos I'm going to try and find some other rolls of unusual and interesting film and have a few days out shooting with them and just see what it's like stepping away from the trusted, safe path of Kodacolor, Fuji or Ilford. Anyway, thanks for watching, do hit like and subscribe and we'll see you again next time.